wait right here. And I've been on diets for over 20 years, off and on. And every part of a diet has been salad. So I see a salad, and there's not a lot of joy there. I go, oh, good, a salad. What would you like on your salad? Haagen-Dazs. Melt the Haagen-Dazs to look like ranch. Just do it. My nutritionist said, how about steamed vegetables? That's heated salad. I don't want that either. One nutritionist recommended sushi. Sushi is high in protein, low in calories. There are some wonderful Japanese dishes. Japanese food has great aesthetics, great presentation. But sushi, it's wrapped in seaweed. Now that's ocean salad. I'm not eating that. And you're not supposed to eat seaweed. I picked that out of the crack of my ass at the beach. I'm pretty sure you're not supposed to eat that. I never went to the beach and went, hey, honey, we got sandwiches here. Hold on. What are you getting pizza for? I hope that's not how it's harvested. Sumo wrestlers up and down the beach at Osaka. I'm a fool now. I'm coming in.
Good morning. It is Wednesday, June the 14th, and this is The True Conservative. Welcome to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there. I'm Ron, your host, and the only true conservative in the United States today. So today, after the Serenity Prayer and the patriotic song of the day, we will have Trump, Mike Pence, no free lunch, the rape of the mind, and Aristotle. It's going to be actually Aristotle Made Easy by Mortimer Adler. All that and more when I come back. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen.
La
Thank you. And now there's no free lunch, 250 Economic Truths by David-Bahnsen.
No society can surely be flourishing and happy, of which the far greater part of the members are poor and miserable. Adam Smith. This is true both morally and economically. Man, as moral agents, must pursue conditions of flourishing for all. And while the utopian vision is futile on this side of glory, in a society of free exchange, incentives exist that result in conditions of flourishing and commercial satisfaction for the vast majority of the citizenry. Poverty may not be fully eradicated, but it will not be the majority condition of the society.
And that was There's No Free Lunch by David-Bahnsen. Back in a minute. Thank you. Who is the true conservative? He knows that the government has no rights. He is religious. He is patriotic and uses common sense. He makes judgments, refuses to speculate, speaks clearly and definitively, and is not afraid to say no. He's open-minded, asking why rather than why not. He is consistent, credible, and influential, not ashamed of his existence, unafraid to learn or correct his mistakes. He is a normal American. Back in a minute. Thank you. What are the true conservative suggested federal political priorities? Number 1, recognize that the government has no rights. 2, defund Planned Parenthood. 3, replace the Affordable Care Act. 4, institute zero-based budgeting. 5, prohibit collective bargaining for all public employees. 6, assign criminal and civil liabilities to all government regulators. 7, immediately repeal the Patriot Act. 8, immediately repeal all emergency dictator laws. 9, reinstate writs of outlawry. 10, use taxpayer funds to sponsor recalls, ballot initiatives, and referendums. 11, create a flexible minimum wage. 12, means test health care. 13, immediately and permanently prohibit investment banking by any office holder. And 14, make nuclear, chemical, and biological weapons obsolete. Back in a minute. Thank you. What are the true conservative cultural priorities? Bring back hierarchy. Bring back the admiration of intelligence, morality, and beauty. Bring back single-income households, integration, parenting, the primacy of existence, certainty of knowledge, and universal rights and wrongs. Bring back principled behavior, masculinity and femininity. Bring back Adam 12, John F. Kennedy, the gold standard, pre-HMO medical care, and nonprofit news. Bring back civil service, the term stupid question, arguments and fights, the cultural influence of the church and the Boy Scouts. Bring back the influence of social organizations such as the Lions Club and the Rotary Club. Bring back bowling. Back in a minute. Thank you. So listening to Buck and Cluck, or whatever their name are, another Republican talk radio show host program, they took over for Rush Limbaugh. They're on the same EIB network channel that Rush Limbaugh used to be on. They took over for Rush Limbaugh, and they do a poor job. There's no doubt about it. But anyways, the whole thing is getting hooked up in neutrality. That's what the subject of this particular thing is. They're talking about Mike Pence and Mike Pence's response. Supposedly, I didn't listen to it, and I'm not going to. I'm not interested in what Mike Pence has to say. I don't much care for Mike Pence. As an aside, I don't care for Mike Pence. He is a backstabber. There's no other way to put it. But anyway, so they're analyzing his and parsing his statement and doing it again in a very neutral sounding way, trying to be, fair. I guess the Republicans are more obsessed with being fair than the left is in this country. It's shameful. It's absolutely shameful. And so a caller calls in and was arguing about it, saying, well, if Pence had said this or meant that, then, of course, then it's a different story. And very analytical, very Harvard law school type of situation. Bullshit. Look, the real issue here with Pence, and particularly running for office, because one of the Cluck and Bluck said that he wouldn't be who he is without Donald Trump. Well, it's kind of rather obvious, but I guess a point well taken. And the question then becomes, he was a loyal because he didn't do it kicking and screaming. That's the point where Buck and Cluck miss it, is that Pence didn't go kicking and screaming onto the team. It wasn't like he was saying, holding a help me, rescue me sign behind Donald Trump's back while they were campaigning. He was a loyal soldier. He backed Donald Trump 100%. He did what he was supposed to do. He was a good vice president until perhaps the very end, when they're counting the votes. But he was a loyal Trump guy. Now he can't say anything good about Trump. He's become a Trump hater. Because again, there's only two ways here. You either like Trump or you don't. There's no middle ground on Trump. And so he's become a Trump hater. And so nobody's asked him the question, at what point did you switch from being a Trump loyalist to a Trump hater, and why? That's what I want to hear as a voter and just as a person. But he doesn't deserve the presidency, again, because he stabbed Donald Trump in the back. And if he'll stab Donald Trump in the back, he'll stab the rest of us in the back. So he doesn't deserve the nomination, and he doesn't deserve to be president of the United States. Plus, he doesn't have the charisma for it. He was the perfect guy for vice president. You always want to have a vice presidential candidate that doesn't outshine you, right? And Pence was perfect. So was Spiro Agnew. So were a whole bunch of these former vice presidents. The only one that I can think of off the top of my head that was a really bad choice was the former governor of the state of Alaska, because she outshone Senator McCain. Senator McCain was the absolutely terrible choice. She would have been okay for the top of the ticket if she wants to run for president, because she's got the charisma for it. Maybe pick Pence as her VP, but he's a VP guy all the way. Okay, he also might make a good cabinet member, maybe secretary of this, that, or the other thing, or better yet, an ambassador. That's probably one of his so either as a VP or as an ambassador, but he just doesn't have the charisma at all to get to become president of the United States. So, but anyways, the point here is all of this has to do with the cult of neutrality and don't fight, don't argue. That's what the left used to say. Don't fight, don't argue about things. Fundamentally, fights and arguments are about what? Reality. The left doesn't want to acknowledge reality. So one of the way to get to that is to get people to quit fighting and quit arguing. The other thing I notice about the left is that they want everybody has to agree on everything. Everything has to be a consensus. They have this fetish, a consensus fetish. And so, so anyways, that's why I say bring back fights and arguments as part of the cultural priorities. Is one of the cultural priorities. Bring back fights and arguments. We need to fight and argue about reality and the importance of any particular reality, and not just fall into and allow ourselves to be brainwashed, to be hectored or bullied and intimidated into being silent for the sake of the left. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, the rape of the mind.
Self-betrayal. As we have seen, there are various inner motivations which may lead to the crime of disloyalty or treason. Sometimes these motivations operate very subtly, in ways unknown to the subject. Sometimes treason is merely a crude selling out to those who pay best. Let us try to arrange and classify some of these motivations, starting with the unconscious ones and ranging towards deliberate treason. In the first place, an act of self-betrayal may begin as a defense against the feeling of being lost and rejected. In order to win acceptance in a group, the individual may hide and not defend his private beliefs and convictions when attacked. In psychology, this may be called, if such passive behavior becomes an unconscious habit, the passive submission to and identification with the stronger person. If you cannot beat the enemy, join him. A. Freud. Although the concept of the inner traitor in us is not so easy to accept, by studying the contrasting inner drives that lead man, one becomes more convinced of that possibility. The clinical concept of man's inner ambivalence is based on numerous psychological experiences. In studying the deeper motivations of many a traitor, we often see that his treacherous act happened after an inner turmoil threatened to break him down, to make an uncontrolled nervous wreck out of him. It is as if the future mental patient preferred surrender to outward enemy rather than to the inward enemies of disease and nervous breakdown. Hess was on the verge of a schizophrenic breakdown when he broke Hitler's rules and flew to England. Let us consider the British Foreign Office spies, Donald Maclean and Guy Burgess. Both showed several symptoms of imminent mental breakdown. It may be known to the reader that both these men left England in May 1951 in order to go via France to Russia. Both deliberately fled the country. Both had communist leanings during their student days at Cambridge, but later renounced their adolescent affiliations. Both showed abnormal symptoms during their service. Maclean had a breakdown in May 1950 due to overwork and excessive drinking. Burgess was reprimanded for reckless driving while in service and for neglect of his work. Reading through the report, one is surprised by the amount of mental instability which was tolerated at such a sensitive spot of the government. Both the men had homosexual leanings that can be related to a suppressed hostility for their mothers and mother country. Text of Britain's Report on Inquiry, The New York Times, September 24, 1955. Time, October 3, 1955. Sometimes treason means a one-sided appeal to justice. This is found in the man who demands some sort of private protective justice and who refuses to acknowledge the subtle relationship between rights and duties. Such professions always feel continually deprived and betrayed. They are what Burglar calls the injustice collectors. In their acts of disloyalty, they are seeking to play the role of their own private judges. Many querulous and even paranoid persons have this kind of character structure. Then there is the disappointed pseudo-idealist who gradually turns into a cynic, covering his emptiness by many self-justifications and exculpations. Such people betray their intellectual disappointment in all their debunking remarks. Conflicts between parents may give rise in the child to the need to betray one or both parents, and this need may be transferred in later life to the need to betray the fatherland. I have often found that the unsolved tears of hate and love toward the parents play an important role in forming the turncoat personality. As we saw, this problem often lies at the root of the totalitarian character structure. Although the totalitarian-minded are not by definition overt traitors, some of these people can easily become traitors to free democratic ideals, neither out of compulsive allegiance to a foreign ideology or out of repetitive nonconformism. In describing special characteristics of a political group, one has to keep in mind that basic inner contrasts are inherent in all people. The quasi-rational Marxistic interpretation of the world, which satisfies the need for logical clarification and reasonable organization of social life, covers anxiety created by the irrational inner forces so easily detected in the totalitarian-minded. The cult of the masses often serves as a defense against loneliness. The belief in progress may be born out of vague despair and insecurity. The fear of deviationism is the fear that the unity of the group will be broken. Suspicion and self-criticism serve to keep, above all, the in-group together. There are several forms of inner conceit that can turn man into a traitor. The Dutch philosopher of whom I spoke earlier is an example of this, as are any of the verbose ideological apologists for totalitarianism. Lack of confidence or lack of belief in the guiding traditions and aims of one's own society can also lead to hostility and to treason. Without such traditional beliefs, suggestibility and receptivity for competing ideologies are increased. The Klaus Fuchs case, which was mentioned earlier, is an example of this. The personal need to be a pioneer or a martyr, often instilled by the unconscious need to suffer, may lead to a private messianic delusion and cause an attack on the traditional values of the group. Many groups consider such extremism as treacherous behavior. Another form of self-betrayal may be caused by the inability to grasp the complexity of the real world. Many people have been seduced into unstable behavior and even disloyalty through lack of comprehension of these complexities and through the need to find a single, all-embracing, easy answer to the problems of human life. Who gives them the simple myth to believe in? The Nazis seduced nearly all Germany into a form of ideological treason in this way. Treason may also be a paradoxical reaction to a deep-seated neurotic sense of guilt. The neurotic strategy of accumulating more guilt, coupled with the consequent development of an inner need for punishment, are often the basic causes of criminal action. The treacherous deed is done precisely in order to provoke punishment. Reich. Treason may also be paid adventure, as we find it in international espionage. This kind of life fascinates the immature mind, which lives in the world of mystery stories and fairy tales. Bribes with women or money make such treason even more attractive. The enemy gratifies economic and sexual needs, and the traitor is willing to sell his integrity to the highest bidder. Overt fear and panic can also cause treason. The whole psychology of totalitarian interview and interrogation is based on this principle. People can be frightened and brainwashed into treason.
And that was Self-Betrayal from The Rape of the Mind by Joost-Meerlo, M.D. Back in a minute. Thank you. So, listening to Hugh Hewitt, Trump hater extraordinaire. Not only is Hugh Hewitt a socialist, he pretends to be neutral, but he isn't. There's no neutral. You're either a conservative or you're a socialist. You're right or you're left. That's all there is to it. So since he doesn't want to come out and identify himself as a conservative, then we're left to conclude the latter. Now, and he's talking about, he's a Trump hater. He's been a Trump hater from the beginning. He thinks that he's fooling everybody into believing that he's neutral. He says, with regards to blah, 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 I'm Switzerland. No, you're not. Switzerland is misunderstood. The Swiss were never neutral in World War II. The Swiss were guarding their own self-interests. They knew it was not in their best interests to take sides in World War II, so they didn't. Okay, that's not the same thing as neutral. Neutral is like a referee. Somebody that goes in and says, you guys on the Allies, you committed a foul, I'm throwing a flag. You people on the Axis, you committed a foul, I'm throwing a flag. That wasn't their role. They were not neutral. They were interested in what was best for Switzerland. Okay, so again, Hugh Hewitt is not neutral. He's a Trump hater. He's been a Trump hater for a long time. So I'm listening to him and his guests going on about Donald Trump and his problems or travails, for lack of a better term. And I'm angry. I am really, really angry. And I've been angry every day since this started. Furious, absolutely furious. Donald Trump, by the way, none of this changes the fact that Donald Trump is still the only candidate that deserves to be nominated and deserves to be president of the United States. Okay, for the reasons I've already outlined. He has the experience and he's kept his promises. So, and the other thing that's good, I had said before and I'll say it again, the only one that can derail Trump is Trump. He's the only one that has the power to do it. What they want him to do is they want him to quit. Because they know quitting is tantamount to a confession. And then once he quits and makes that so-called confession, that they can make his history, his entire presidency, disappear. They can argue that it was as though it never happened. And that's what they want to do. But the only way they can do that is with Trump's confession. And I'd said, for the good of him and for the good of all of his supporters, which is about a half of the country or half of the voters in the country, he should not quit and he should not confess. So the other day he came out and he said, not going to quit. He's going to run for office even if he's convicted. And from what I've seen of the charges, that's highly unlikely. That it's garbage. The law is on his side. How they were even, well, I know how, because judges are weak and easily intimidated by a relatively shrewd attorney into bringing a case that shouldn't be brought. Because this case shouldn't have been brought. A judge should have thrown this out and said, get lost. But unfortunately, there aren't any judges that go by the law anymore. They go strictly by their careers, what they think is or perceive as best for their careers. So okay, we're on track, I guess. I don't know when the trial date is supposed to be, but there's also the problem of apparently the prosecution interfered with a witness. Perhaps bribery, intimidation, something along those lines. So that's an issue as well. Even if he does get convicted, I think that it will be overturned on appeal, probably at the appellate level, and very possible, if not there, then at the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court should dump it 9-0. And this is stupid, by the way, for the Democrats. It's not going to help. All it's going to end up doing is blow back on them. They're the ones that are going to end up paying the price in the long run. I think that the country, I'm sick and tired of their single-minded hatred of one man. I'm absolutely sick and tired of it. I look forward to the day when each one of the people that are involved in this, all the way up to President Biden, get theirs, that they're going to be dragged out. They're going to have to go to court. They're going to have to stand in front of a judge and hear 37 counts or more against them. I look forward to that day. Now, I know there's not a lot of Republicans that have any guts or any balls to do that. There's plenty of women in the House of Representatives that are willing to do that type of thing. We have Lauren Boebert and others that are actually prepared articles of impeachment against various members of the Biden administration. But Biden himself should be facing impeachment immediately. If Trump got impeached twice, Biden should get impeached at least that many times, perhaps 3 or 4 times, or as many times as it takes to get him out of office. Again, I'm not neutral. I'm a Trump supporter. I've been a Trump supporter since the very beginning. And being a Trump supporter doesn't make me any less doesn't affect my status as a true conservative. You can be a non-Trump supporter and still be a true conservative. I mind my own business on this. I vote for Trump because I honestly think that he is what's best for me and mine, and I actually believe he's what's best for the United States. There are a few times when you need to vote outside your own interests, and that's when you vote. In almost any election, you're going to be voting outside your own interests. You're going to be voting for what you think is best for you and yours, and for what you believe is best for your district, your state, or in this case, the entire United States of America. So that's the way it is, and that the only person that can change my mind is Donald Trump. Nobody else can. I won't listen to it. Whatever garbage that they want to say, I'm not going to bother to listen to it. One of the things that the left likes to do is to try to get you to stop and listen, is tell you, oh, but you're not listening, or you don't understand. And then you're supposed to say, okay, go ahead and explain. Or you should have more than one point of view. And again, the whole idea there is to shut you up so that they can fill your head full of garbage. Don't be fooled. Trust your conscience. I do. I trust my conscience. And in supporting Donald Trump, my conscience is clear, crystal clear. So that's what you have to do as well. Ayn Rand was the first person that really turned me on to this. I used to hear about conscience when I was a kid, but Ayn Rand, for some reason, put it in a way that really solidified things for me. She didn't call it a conscience. She called that little voice in your head that tells you when something is wrong. It's what the rest of us call conscience, okay? Listen to your conscience and trust your conscience. If your conscience tells you something is wrong, then it's wrong. Find out why it's wrong. And don't allow anybody to intimidate you. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now a new book called Aristotle for Everybody by Mortimer J. Adler.
Part 1. Man, the Philosophical Animal. Chapter 1. Philosophical Games. Many of us have played 2 games without realizing we were on the way to becoming philosophical. One is called Animal, Vegetable, Mineral. The other, 20 Questions. Both games consist in asking questions. However, that is not what makes them philosophical games. It is what lies behind the questions, a set of categories, a scheme of classification. Classifying things, placing them in this or that category, is a familiar process. Everyone does it at one time or another. Shopkeepers, when they take stock of what is on their shelves. Librarians, when they catalogue books. Secretaries, when they file letters or documents. But when the objects to be classified are the contents of the physical world, or the even larger universe that includes the physical world, then philosophy enters the picture. The 2 games, Animal, Vegetable, Mineral, and 20 Questions, are sometimes played as if they were the same game. That occurs when the first of the 20 questions to be asked is animal, vegetable, or mineral, in order to find out whether the object being thought of falls into one of these 3 large categories or classes of physical things. But only some of the objects we can think about are physical things. If, for example, the object decided on was a geometrical figure, such as a circle or a number, such as the square root of -1, or if it happened to be one of the Greek gods, such as Zeus, Apollo, or Athena, asking whether the object in question was animal, vegetable, or mineral would not, or at least should not, get an answer. The game of 20 questions, when it is not begun by asking animal, vegetable, or mineral, is concerned with discovering any object that can be thought about by any body. It is not limited to objects that are physical things. Of the 2 games, it is the more likely to engage us in philosophical thought without our being aware of it. To become aware of it, we need Aristotle's help. Classifying was one of the skills in which Aristotle excelled. Another was his skill in asking questions. Philosophical thought began with the asking of questions, questions that can be answered on the basis of our ordinary, everyday experience, and with some reflection about that experience that results in a sharpening and refinement of our common sense. Animal, vegetable, and mineral is a rough and ready, 3-fold division of things we find in the physical world. But we use the word mineral loosely when we use it to stand for all the physical things that fall on one side of the line that divides living organisms from inanimate things, rose bushes or mice from sticks or stones. All inanimate things are not minerals, such as gold or silver that we dig from deposits in the earth. Some are rock formations found on the Earth's surface or in its interior. Some are other forms of matter in liquid or gaseous state. In the category of non-living or inanimate bodies that is loosely covered by the term mineral, Aristotle would have us distinguish between elementary and composite bodies. An elementary body, according to Aristotle, is one that consists in a single kind of matter, gold, for example, or copper or zinc. In contrast, a composite body is one that is composed of 2 or more different kinds of matter, such as brass, which is a mixture of copper and zinc. But for Aristotle, a more important distinction is the one that divides living from non-living things. What differentiates all living organisms from inert bodies, whether they are elementary or composite bodies? From our ordinary experience of living organisms, we know that they all have certain common characteristics. They take nourishment, they grow, they reproduce. Among living organisms, what differentiates plants from animals? Again, from our ordinary experience, we know that animals have certain common characteristics that plants lack. They are not rooted in the earth like plants. They have the ability to move from place to place by their own means of locomotion. They do not draw their nourishment from the air and from the soil, as plants do. In addition, most animals have sense organs. The line that divides inert bodies from living organisms sometimes leaves us wondering on which side of the line a particular thing belongs. This is also true of the line that divides plants from animals. For example, some plants appear to have sensitivity, even though they do not have sense organs like eyes and ears. Some animals, such as shellfish, seem to lack the power of locomotion. Like plants, they appear to be rooted in one spot. In classifying physical things as inanimate bodies, plants, and animals, Aristotle was aware that his division of all physical things into these three large classes did not exclude borderline cases, things that in a certain respect appear to belong on one side of the dividing line and that in another respect appear to belong on the other side. He recognized that in the world of bodies, the transition from things lifeless to living things, and from plant life to animal life, is gradual and not a clear-cut all-or-none affair. Nevertheless, Aristotle persisted in thinking that the differences between living and non-living bodies and between plants and animals separated them into quite different kinds of things. His reason for holding this view was as follows. If we did not, in the first place, recognize and understand the clear-cut distinction between a stone and a mouse, we would never find ourselves puzzled by whether something difficult to classify was a living or a non-living thing. Similarly, if we did not recognize the clear-cut distinction between a rose bush and a horse, we would never wonder whether a given specimen of living organism was a plant or an animal. Just as animals are a special kind of living organism because they perform functions that plants do not, so for a similar reason are human beings a special kind of animal. They perform certain functions that no other animals perform, such as asking general questions and seeking answers to them by observation and by thought. That is why Aristotle called human beings rational animals, questioning and thinking animals, able to engage in philosophical thought. There may be animals that appear to straddle the borderline that divides humans from non-humans. Porpoises and chimpanzees, it has recently been learned, have enough intelligence to engage in rudimentary forms of communication. But they do not appear to ask themselves, or one another, questions about the nature of things, and they do not appear to try, by one means or another, to discover the answers for themselves. We may speak of such animals as almost human, but we do not include them as members of the human race. Each distinct kind of thing, Aristotle thought, has a nature that distinguishes it from all the others. What differentiates one class of things from everything else defines the nature possessed by every individual thing that belongs to that class. When we speak of human nature, for example, we're simply saying that all human beings have certain characteristics and that these characteristics differentiate them from other animals, from plants, and from inanimate things. Aristotle's scheme of classification arranged the 5 main classes of physical things in an ascending order. He placed elementary and composite bodies at the bottom of the scale. Each of the higher classes is higher because it possesses the characteristics of the class below and, in addition, has certain distinguishing characteristics that the class below does not have. In the scale of natural things, the animate is a higher form of existence than the inanimate. Animals are a higher form of life than plants, and human life is the highest form of life on Earth. All living organisms, like all inanimate bodies, occupy space and have weight. But in addition, as we have noted, they eat, grow, and reproduce. Because they are living organisms, animals, like plants, perform these vital functions, but they also perform certain functions that plants do not. At the top of the scale are human beings, who perform all the vital functions performed by other animals and who, in addition, have the ability to seek knowledge by asking and answering questions, and the ability to think philosophically. Of course, it can be said that many of the higher animals think, and even that computers think. Nor is it true that only humans have intelligence. Intelligence in varying degrees is to be found throughout the animal world, just as it is to be found in varying degrees in members of the human race. But the special kind of thinking that gives rise to asking and answering philosophical questions distinguishes humans from other animals. No other animal plays philosophical games. In the word of physical things that Aristotle divides into 5 large classes, the word body names the one all-embracing class. There is no more inclusive class of which bodies are a subclass. Everything in the physical world is a body of one kind or another. Can we go to the opposite extreme and find a subclass of bodies at which we must stop because we are unable to divide it any further into smaller subclasses? Is the human species such a subclass of animals? Faced with that question, most of us probably think at once of different races or varieties of mankind, differentiated by skin color, by facial characteristics, by head shape, and so on. Why do not such characteristics divide human beings into different kinds or subclasses? In this connection, Aristotle made an important distinction. Not all the characteristics of a thing, he said, define its nature or essence. As we have already seen, Aristotle thought man should be defined as a rational or philosophical animal. Being able to ask questions about the what, the why, and the wherefore of things is what makes anyone a human being, not the skin color, the snub nose, the straight hair, or the shape of the head. We can, of course, divide human beings into an endless variety of subclasses, tall or short, fat or thin, white or black, strong or weak, and so on. But although such differences may be used to distinguish one subgroup of human beings from another, they cannot be used, according to Aristotle, to exclude any of these subgroups from the human race. What is even more important, it cannot be said that the members of one subgroup are more or less human than the members of another. In other words, the differences between one subclass of human beings and another are superficial or minor, as compared with the basic or major differences that separate human beings from other animals. Aristotle called the superficial or minor differences accidental. The basic or major differences he regarded as essential. Human beings and brute animals are essentially different. Tall human beings and short ones, fat human beings and thin ones are accidentally different. It is only in this way that one human being differs from another. We are all animals of the same kind, but one individual may have more and another individual less of this or that human characteristic. Such individual differences are much less important than the one thing that unites all men and women, their common humanity, which is the one respect in which all human beings are equal.
And that was Chapter 1 of Aristotle for Everybody, Difficult Thought Made Easy by Mortimer J. Adler. And Mortimer Adler is one of the people that has influence over my thinking. I started with Ayn Rand, then I went to the Icon and Totem books, the introducing series. There was introducing philosophy, introducing ethics, that kind of thing. And then I went on to the Mortimer Adler books, and I started with Aristotle for Everybody, Difficult Thought Made Easy. And I like Mr. Adler because he makes philosophical issues. He stresses the importance of philosophy and how it affects our lives, but he explains things in a very simple way. So whatever is written by Mortimer Adler, he's got a whole bunch of good books I highly recommend. Back in a minute. Thank you. I'm Ron, your host and the only true conservative in the United States today, bidding adios to all of the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there. And until next time, be honest, be smart, be beautiful, and remember that the left has no authority, no power, and they can't win.